I just have to get used to the microphone. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Mike Eberts, and I am glad to see you here and the other audience that is off in Zoom land. Well, I can't say see you, but it's good that you're here, wherever here is in Zoom land. Today's topic is the history of Glendale College. As you may or may not know, in 2027, we will be celebrating our centennial. And my part of this presentation is going to be talking about the first decade of Glendale College, which certainly had its challenges. And then Ed Karp actually, I'm going to be Ed's warm up guy. He's coming in with more recent decades and where we are going from here. And where we're going from here sounds pretty exciting. So let me get into the clicker and begin. Well, there we go. I had it the wrong way. That's what it was. All right, we will begin with the cornerstone that is in front of our administration building. You've probably walked past it a number of times without, really realizing it. Glendale Junior College, circa 1937. Well, for many years, until spring 1987, there was a time capsule behind it. And the editor of the El Vaquero, that was the last semester before I became advisor to the El Vaquero. In spring 1987, the editor of the paper, Joelle Ryan, she wrote a story about how our former dean of students, Walt Smith, and I know there are a couple of people in here who remember Walt Smith, uh, that he wanted to know what was behind that cornerstone. Walt Smith had gotten contacted by a alum from the 1930s who said, "Hey, there's a real treasure trove of stuff behind it." And Walt Smith apparently took a little hammer and pounded around it to see if he heard a hollow sound, and he did. And another name that I think just a real treasure to a lot of us. Dr. Dabbit, John Dabbit said, "Yeah, Walt, go in." And they found the 1937 time capsule that was put there by students. And the materials, which are now in special collections at the library, they're not remarkable. There are a lot of newspaper clippings, although there is um, an aluminum record of a flag raising in the mid 1930s on Flag Day that I just got to hear the recording of. Uh, the library says that aluminum record is really fragile, so we're sending it out to a company to digitize it, and then we'll all be able to hear what that says. Well, anyhow, getting back to how all this starts, in that article that was written by Joelle Ryan in the El Vaquero in spring 1987, she told the story of how students from 50 years earlier had created that time capsule to tell the story of what I'm calling Glendale College's finest moment. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1927, big year. Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic. And Glendale College opened, bigger than either of those two. 126 students. This is the first known student photo. Uh, and uh, it was a very cohesive group. Just about all were recent graduates from local high schools, and just about all of them sought to be transfer students. The original campus, ooh, was it modest? Uh, classes were taught in the late afternoon at Glendale High. After all the high school classes were done, it's okay, Glendale Junior College, you're on. Uh, was there a meeting place for students? Well, yes. There were two tables that were set aside at the high school library, and the Glendale Junior College technical arts students created little calligraphied signs that said for GJC students only. 1929, for the fall semester, uh, the college gets a campus of its own. So things are looking up. The location is where the Glendale Central Library, the public library, is now at Harvard and Louise. And it's right in the center of town, so you couldn't beat the location. Ah, it had been a school facility before. Remember, we were still part of what was at that time kind of a K through 14 district. Yeah. And the college grew. Uh, by fall 31, up to 715 students. And it was quite a college experience. Uh, there were lots and lots of campus clubs. In going through the catalogs of that era, you just kind of like, wow, those students were really active outside of class. They had social events. Part of the college's mission seemed to be to turn out, proper ladies and gentlemen, as it was understood in that era. So things were moving, and there was quite a few sports for men and women. Uh, but things are about to go, well, terribly wrong. For those of us who know of earthquakes as happening in the morning, and I can think of a lot of our earthquakes. They seem to happen early. This one was right before dinner. It was 5:54 p.m., March 10, 1933. What we Southern Californians know as the Long Beach quake. And there were some schools that were damaged in Long Beach and in Compton and in other places, a little to the south of us, 20, 25 miles to the south of us. And originally, it was thought that those 1908 buildings on the Glendale Junior College campus were fine. But because of damage that had happened, in the southern part of the county, the thought was, well, we better check these buildings out. And considerable structural damage was found. And so beginning January 1, 1934, the campus moves into tents. This is what it looked like. Um, there was a wooden bungalow. If you look over at the right side of the photo, there's a wooden bungalow, and that was still held in use. But the big buildings in the background, they're out of play. And some described the tents as being like army tents. Others said they were kind of like Yosemite sort of things, where you pay to stay at Yosemite and you're not quite in a hotel, but you're not in a little tent either. Um, Students colloquially refer to it as Camp Nelson, named after the college director, Charles Nelson. Here's a quote from Chet Lynch, who hung around the campus up until the mid '80s in some way or form, uh, saying that, hey, the tents were not very good at holding in sound. He also mentioned that in the winter, sometimes students would have to wear overcoats. They have to sit in class wearing overcoats because they were in a tent. And however, Mr. Lynch did say that in the summer the tents held in the heat exceedingly well. Assemblies were held outdoors. The church that it looks like it's made of brick, that's in the right on the photo. I believe that's still there. Yeah. A system of boardwalks was constructed between the tents and other parts of the campus. Uh, I guess the times being what they were, some students roller skated to class, which I don't know. That sounds like fun. Uh, Here's a quote about the boardwalk. This is from the Galleon, the student newspaper. The early names and mascots were all about ocean going and pirates, like the teams were the Buccaneers and so forth, and the newspaper was the Galleon. I guess it was those hard heels that caused that clattering. Well, Director Nelson knew that this college intense, I mean, for all its novelty there in the beginning, that it wasn't going to be a lasting solution. And so a bond measure was put on the ballot, uh, February 1934, depth of the Great Depression in tax avoidant, fiscally conservative Glendale. Well, it lost. And after the failure of that bond measure, it was beginning to be openly questioned whether the campus should survive or whether we should just throw in with Pasadena City College or some other local community college. Well, the student newspaper uh, sprung into action in the fall, and they consistently and loudly campaigned for a new campus. And the idea began to gain traction in the community. First among parents of students, that makes sense, and then among city leaders who, didn't like the idea of their fair city being a failure in any way. A second bond issue was qualified for the October 1935 ballot, and this is when the student leaders really did distinguish themselves, maybe more than any group of students ever since. They were organized. Uh, Student government named 33 precinct captains, and campus clubs were then assigned to, this is your precinct. It's like basketball zone defense, except this was offense. Um, Students went door to door, talking up the bond measure, handing out literature. The Patrons Club, which in those days was mostly a parents organization, along with Associated Students, they opened up a campaign office in downtown Glendale. Remember, our campus is at Harvard and Louise. Student leaders were available to talk to the service clubs, the Kiwanis, and so forth about conditions at Glendale Junior College and what could be done about it. There were several locations that were considered for the new campus. Eventually, what was called the Verdugo Woodlands campus was settled upon. First, because it was scenic, and two, because the land was cheap. And you say, really? The land was cheap? Well, remember, we're talking almost 100 years ago. But a second part of it was Glendale didn't really extend up this far at that time. This was on the outskirts of town. So, as you can see in this photo from one of the three local newspapers that existed in Glendale at the time, think about it. Glendale had three newspapers. The Times Independent. This is students that are looking out over the location of our campus. And gosh, it looks pretty empty to me. Um, they also offered free transportation to people who just wanted to see this proposed college site for themselves. Uh, they wrote and distributed campaign information to the local newspapers. They had a good public relations apparatus that they, kept going. The political science classes were pretty active. Each student canvassed 20 people apiece. So, what? Gee, if you had a 40 student class, it'd be 800 people. Um, and 18 of those 20 people had to be registered voters. So we kind of had an idea ahead of time how the vote was going to go. Okay. The election is getting near. There was a big bonfire rally on the campus. Nearly 1,000 people, students and parents and people from the community, uh, they all attended. Uh, USC football coach Howard Jones. By the way, have you ever noticed the college colors? They're very Trojanish, aren't they? Yeah, it, I see little wisps of evidence that we were meant to be this mini public USC. But okay, well, anyhow, USC football coach Howard Jones was the featured speaker, and the crowd rallied under what had become a popular student slogan. We need a campus, not a camp. It was going to be the end of Camp Nelson. Well, the election is getting very near. 4 days before the election, the student newspaper, The Galleon, publishes a special edition not for the student body, but for the community. The Patrons Club, the parents, and other organization footed the bill. It was delivered by students. On election day, voter turnout was described as light in the morning, picked up in the afternoon. The final vote count, and remember, the first ballot measure had failed. This one won by a 4-1 margin. Within the city, the first group of people to hear about it was the crowd at the Fox Alexander Theater, the Alex. Allegedly, they broke out into enthusiastic applause. Before the night was done, students converged upon the campus. And it wasn't over the next morning. The next morning, students did a snake dance. And I can envision what it must have been like. I don't think I've ever seen a snake dance in person or participated in one. But the word is they closed down Brand Boulevard. And yet we're talking about during the morning commute hours on a Wednesday. But yeah, yeah. The reason why this photo, which I think should be a mural somewhere in the administration building, um, the reason why I think this photo was just so perfectly taken was that this was right across from the Glendale News Press offices, because in those days they were on Brand. So uh, this is where I want to end this, or my portion of it, because this is really, our origin story. I mean, Superman has an origin story, Batman has an origin story, so does Glendale College. Um, Many of the students who worked on that fall 1935 bond campaign had either graduated or were about to graduate by spring 1937. The college administration felt that it was only proper to move up, moving into the new campus to a few weeks before the spring semester ended so that some of those folks um, could experience it. And that is my story of the college's finest moment. Now we get to recent decades, and then we get to the exciting things that are going to go on from here. Ed, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Karp, Dean of Research Planning and Grants at GCC. Um, and I've been working here for a little over 30 years, almost 31 years. And I've done this presentation or a version of this presentation at the CSEA retreat and then again for professional development. And most of the people, so just to go back, my topic is the last basically 30 years at GCC and the changes that we've seen. when I've done this presentation before, most of the people in the audience were newer people. And now I can see in Kreider Hall here, there, there are a lot of people who have way more experience at GCC than I do. So it'll be interesting to see if the kind of the reaction is the same. But it would be good because we can kind of reminisce about it. And I think we'll have some time at the end to talk or ask questions or something like that, just to kind of reminisce about the recent history of Glendale College. But then a lot of you have been here 30 years, a little more than 30 years. We should remember that that's like a third of the history of the entire college. So we cover a lot. I mean, we know a lot about the culture and the physical campus and all that stuff. So I did want to cover some of the changes that have happened over the last 30 years at GCC. The first thing I have just on this sort of title page is the recent logos, and people probably remember the recent logos. I'm sure they know the current one, and then probably going back to that square one. Um, um, a lot of people in this room probably remember the archway logo there, Glendale Community College, in the very 70s kind of font. That's what the logo was when I started here, and it was on all the catalogs and everything. Oh wow, still letterhead, yeah. Probably there's some people who have those uh, books of like order forms, like where you would order a thing of paper with the old logo. I did want to start though, because I am Dean of Research Planning and Grants, to look at sort of the enrollment over the last, this is a little more than 30 years. This is from 1989. But I wanted to kind of highlight the last few years. And if you look at this graph, the non-credit enrollment is shown in that dark red color. The credit enrollment is shown in the blue color. And the green is the overall head count of all students, credit or non-credit at GCC. And this has been our pattern over the last 10 years, so 2014 to 2024, we have been kind of declining. And sometimes, but in the last 2 years, 3 years, we've had this resurgence in enrollment. So we're getting more students. Sometimes I hear people when they um, when they talk about kind of enrollment trends at GCC, sometimes they'll say, you know, we're a much bigger college than we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Obviously, then in 1927, with 116 students, we're way larger than that. But the pattern that we actually see in our enrollment, since I started here and a little before, is that we were really bigger in the early 2000s, the late 90s and the early 2000s. We served more students, headcount students. So it's just sort of something to remember. I've always said, since I started here, we were a college of about 13,000 to 15,000 students. Now that's really just credit students in one semester, 13 to 15,000. We haven't changed really a whole lot over the years. It's gone up, it's gone down, but we're not much bigger. We're definitely not much bigger than we were back in 1989. But we're not much smaller than we were in 1989 either. All right. So most of this is reminiscing with pictures from the college catalogs over the years. So I went back to the 1994 college catalog to get a campus map. Now, of course, the reason it's from the college catalogs is because everybody didn't have cell phones in 1994 and weren't taking all these nice pictures of the campus and posting them on social media. So I went back and I got some of these from the web, some of these from most of them from the catalogs. But you can see that the campus, it looks basically the same as it does now, but there's a lot of weird things. And I don't, well, it's hard to point things out, but there is something called the corral. I don't know how many people remember the corral. Yeah, I knew a lot of people in this room would remember the corral, which was, I don't know what it was before I started here, but it was basically just a kind of a oval thing with trees in it, right? It wasn't that what it was? And then the Los Robles building was built there, and now it's the basically the Sierra Vista building. There's also something called, well, there's a trailer court, which is actually still there. We call it San Fernando now, but it's amazing how long trailer courts last. But there's also, if you look down um, in behind the administration building, there's something called CB, and that is what we called what was the classroom building, which I started in February 1994. The classroom building was demolished probably in what, June 1994. So it didn't last that long. But my office was there when I started at GCC. It was in a little office with really no windows except a high window on the side that let some light in. But that was a classroom building, and we had classrooms in there until we built um, the new library and those buildings. So we can look now at 2024. The shape of the campus is the same. We have the Buena Vista building. We have Sierra Vista. It looks simpler now because kind of the bigger buildings have kind of overtaken the collection of smaller buildings that we had. But the corral is no longer there. Classroom building obviously no longer there. Some other things aren't there anymore. Um, So I did want to highlight the classroom building. It is an odd shape, isn't it? I mean, it's diagonal and it's in two sections too. Even though it was called the classroom building. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was all called the classroom building. Even though it was split by this stairway that went up to the library. And the only picture I could find of the classroom building, and I think this is what it is, CB, is from um, I think it's the early '90s, a catalog in the early '90s, and I think that that's the classroom building there with those windows and the hedge in front of it. But if I'm correct, my first office would have been at the behind this student's head, somewhere over there toward the steps up to the library. Here's some pictures of the campus center as it was. Most of these pictures are a little before 1994. Actually, one of the pictures, the kind of artsy one with the out of focus something in the foreground, is from the 60s. But the campus center basically looked like this when I started here. It had that kind of characteristic clock which I always liked. It looked very mid-century, and we have similar clocks now on campus, sort of like the one at the planetarium building, but it's not exactly the same. But you can see that this was the campus center where students hung out. The cafeteria was there. Um, the the it was the center of campus. Well, it wasn't really the center of campus. It was a little above the center of campus, but that's where students hung out. The round table that you see there, we'll also have a later picture of that. So that's of historical interest. Um, so these are views of the campus center from down below. So basically, like from the administration building, looking up at the stairway that would take you up to the middle of campus and past the bookstore. So there are people in the room, maybe people watching online, who remember the old bookstore too. Um, that to me, that was a very kind of dark and low ceilinged kind of place, full of books. And well, if there were more than like 10 or 15 students in there, you couldn't really make your way around. Is my experience in there. Um, but that was the bookstore. It was in the middle of campus, right in front of that campus center building, in that plaza there. And the stairs would go up to the campus center building and down to the administration building. And then off to the left is the stairs that would go up to the library. More pictures here from the catalog of stairs to the library and the bookstore. You can see how kind of idyllic tried to make it look, even though these are black and white pictures that are fairly low quality scans of the photos in the catalog, but you can see those stairs going up. And obviously, one thing that hasn't changed at GCC over the years is the fact that the campus is basically vertical, right? I mean, you need stairs or elevators to get from one side of the campus to another side of the campus, and it's been that way. Uh, well, I mean, there was only the one building and then two buildings in 1937, but as we kind of grew up the hill. I do want to kind of pay attention to the fountain. So this fountain was really in the center of campus. It was in that plaza that was the walkway between the upper campus and the lower campus at the time, right out front of the bookstore. And this fountain itself, which I don't have a picture of where it is currently, but does everybody know where the fountain is right now? It's out in front of the San Rafael. Well, yeah, it's like over that way, right? My directions may be wrong, but it's right out the health center. It's there, but it's been I mean, it's basically just kind of a slab of concrete stuck there, but at least they preserved it. They moved it when the construction was done in the, I think, yeah, in the mid '90s, when the library was remodeled and all the new student center and stuff was put in. The that fountain is there, and the fountain is called Memorial to C.A. Nelson, and C.A. Nelson is, I'm pretty sure, Charles Nelson, the director of uh, Glendale Community College from 1927 to 1939, I believe. We'll get to that in a second too. But the fountain was by an artist named Robert Bogue or Boag. I'm not sure who it is, but it was funded, as was a lot of the campus, by the New Deal and WPA, the Works Project Administration, and their Federal Art Project (FAP) funded several art projects on campus, including this fountain. And you can go, the one of the very few sites I found on the internet. Mike probably knows more, but um, is this Living New Deal site that has several things at GCC, the tiles in the administration building and things like that, as funded by the New Deal. Here's another picture of the campus center and the fountain, and showing how active it was around the fountain. And of course, students sitting on the fountain all the time in all these pictures. I'm not sure if students sit on it where it is now, probably not, but it's not as central to the campus as it used to be. But here's looking down toward, you can see the auditorium in the background there. And then this is what I was talking about, the round table. And then there's also, it's called a petrochrome bench. Um, um, obviously, wait a second. Sorry. The bench there. Okay. I meant to mention this in this previous picture, but you can see the bench there, right? It was in the middle of campus at the bottom of the staircases. The bench exists now. Does everybody know where the bench is now? It it is right in front of the administration building. So as you're walking, say, from San Rafael to the other side of campus, to the north side of campus, look to the left. There's a bunch of wooden benches there, and then there's like a wooden bench, and then there's this concrete bench, art project really, and then another wooden bench. But you can see it there, dedicated also to Charles Nelson, director from 1927 to 1939. And I found on that Living New Deal site that the artist of the bench was unknown, but the round table and those rounded benches are by an artist named Jane Mussey, also funded by the art project from the WPA. Um, I I remember seeing these, but I don't think they still exist on campus. Does anybody know? Has anybody seen the round? They were taken out, yeah. So they're probably destroyed at this point, probably, which is unfortunate. Yeah, but it's good to see the history, some of the history preserved. I really like that picture. You might not be able to see it too well, but the round table there, you can see looking outward with those benches there, and there's no students anywhere in sight, which is may have been unusual, but I like the kind of architectural look of the that photo with that art, those table and benches there. People might remember the physics biology building and the chemistry math building, right? Like the science building was it the second or third building to be built? I think it might have been the second, the science building at the time. Right? Yeah, yeah, and that was called the physics biology building when I started in 1994. And then behind it, Arroyo Seco, until spring semester, was called the chemistry math building. But it's interesting, if you go into these buildings, you can still see some of the historical kind of you can tell what the history used to be to some extent. So the physics biology building on the left there, that's from the late 80s or early 90s. Well, it's probably from earlier. They would use these in the catalogs for years after. But you can kind of see where the building begins, right? The exterior facade of the building. If you go into the physics biology building, which is now Camino Real, and look between Mike Allen's office is right over there. Look between where the Camino Real building and the Science Center is, you can sort of tell that there used to be a facade there. And the way I always tell, and I could be wrong, but those stairs are the same as they were in the earliest part of the campus. Those really hard uh, stairs that look like they would take, I don't know, a nuclear bomb or something to to demolish them. You can see that, and then the steps going down into the bathroom there. That's the way it was when you would enter the physics biology building. You would go in there. You could go to the restroom down the steps, or you could go up to the second floor. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. That's an interesting fact. Yeah, I didn't come across that, but yeah, that would be interesting. And I if people online didn't hear, Mike Allen said that all the restrooms in the physics biology building were built as men's restrooms because they thought there would be no need for women taking science classes, I guess. But fortunately, we're a little more enlightened at this point. Yeah, ouch. That's so let's move on to the library building. The library used to be different than it is now, but you can definitely see a lot of the architectural details from the redesigned and rebuilt library facade are related to the way the old library building looked. I couldn't get too many pictures. I'm sure there are pictures available of the old library, but when I first came here, I mean, I was really struck by the library just because it was such a brick building. I mean, it was this kind of the dark red bricks. You I don't know. It looked very well, 60s, I guess, but very heavy brick building. These are some pictures from on the left. There's before the 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 change, and 1997 when the new building was built. You can sort of see some of the references to the old building. So that curved facade with the glass there, away from the brick side. But the curved facade, I think, I mean, seems to be referenced in the new version of the library, which has the bigger kind of semicircle shape with those windows and walls there. But it seems like they were trying to give us something of the history of the college here, not just demolish everything, which is something that I think they've tried to do off and on when we're building new buildings. I mean, we have the tiles in the Sierra Vista building. There's some the Buena Vista building, I wish personally was a little bit more connected to the kind of architecture and the design of the rest of the college. There is some of it, and I think some of the if you go in Buena Vista and look near the elevator areas, they have tiles there in geometric shapes, and I think those are sort of references to the kind of colorful Mediterranean and Spanish style tiles that we have elsewhere on campus. But I don't know if they did a great job with that. But this is the library. Um, unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of pictures. I'm almost done here. Actually, we're pretty early, but um, so Glendale, the Garfield campus. I couldn't find many pictures of the Garfield campus, but I do remember when I started here in '94, they were just building the Adult Community Training Center, ACTC, which is what the Garfield campus sort of was known at that time. And it was the building which is now, it escapes me. What's the name of the building? It, which is it? Isn't Mariposa the new one or what's Tropico? Tropico is the old one. Yeah, sorry about that. But it was, which was a nice design with a nice, I mean, pretty good design with the parking underneath, and you go up the elevator to go to the offices. Kind of interesting. Um, I do like the new Mariposa building. Um, and then I'm gonna, well, I'll end with a few more recent things. But this is one of my first memories at GCC in 1996. Bill Clinton stopped on his campaign for the presidency at GCC, and you can see the sea of people there who got the tickets to it. I used to have my ticket. I don't know if anybody else still does. I think it's gone though. It was a ticket, a commemorative ticket. And uh, Clinton was at a podium or not a podium, I guess a lectern like this, down at the kind of the corner of the administration building, sort of in front of San Rafael, I guess. Um, and this sea of people, a lot of students, but also community people, and those of us who worked here, spread up the whole lawn all the way to the library. Now, you probably can't see me in this picture, but I probably am like as about as far as you can get on the end on the left somewhere, because I was like way at the end. And then I did want to include the picture of Clinton with Dr. Davitt there. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. I know Dr. Davitt's politics and Clinton's politics were not exactly the same. So John Davitt's expression there, I think, is interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, offhand, if anybody does, but yeah, it was expensive, yeah. And another Oh, I guess it was worth it, yeah. I don't know if it brought us any enrollment, but at least it but one of the big things that I remember, from Clinton's visit was looking back at the library and seeing the snipers, I saw one sniper, I think, on top of it dressed in black, like, on top of the library building. That was kind of an interesting thing. I guess you always know that they have security people all over the place, but you never really see them. Oh, he was campaigning. He gave a speech on, education. I think it was just, like, the need for I think it was the need for, like, vocational education at the time. I, vaguely remember. It was just kind of the usual, I think, a stump speech, but it was focused on education, so he was campaigning for his.
Dole resigned from the Senate.
Oh, really?
And,
Interesting.
and so I think that there may have been a little bit of of a of Clinton just upstaging Dole.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. And there was the story that, if you remember, Rocky Cola Cafe, I guess, up in Montrose, Clinton knew the owner. I don't know the local history really, but Clinton visited that right after he visited GCC. Yeah, yeah. They must have closed. Traffic was terrible. Obviously, they must have closed off all the streets up there. Yeah, Hazel introduced. Yeah. Oh, give the.
Excuse me, can I just say, we have people joining in online, so if
Oh,
anyone's gonna make a comment, just, signal me for the mic.
There were 3 introductions of Clinton, and Dr. Davitt gave one introduction, and he was fine. He was like John Davitt always was, good, straightforward introduction. Then the mayor of Glendale, and I forget the gentleman's name. Oh my gosh, he was like Jackie Gleason and the Honeymooners, going humana, humana, humana. And then Hazel got up and just knocked it out of the park. It was it was pretty funny actually.
yeah. That was a interesting day. Yeah, I yeah. I don't. Were there questions online? I guess we don't know.
I'm being signaled for that, but if
Okay, we'll do it at the end. Okay. Okay. Then the last part of my presentation is to look at the GCC website over the last few years, because that's really the point of contact a lot of students and other people have of the college. So this is us putting our best foot forward, I guess. In 1998, this is the first earliest website that I could find. I seem to have a vague memory of an earlier one that was even simpler than this one, but this was put together by Gary Parker, who was our dean of admissions at the time. Unfortunately, passed away soon after this, actually. Um, but his office, admissions, which was down in the administration building, of course, at that time, took ownership of the website. This is from the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine. So one of those images of the buttons is missing. But that's how we presented ourselves back in 1998. Oh yeah, you can see Gary Parker's email at the bottom: gparker@glendale.cc.ca.us. Some of you remember those email addresses. CC is for community college, CA is for California, US. It was not .edu at the time, but it would be pretty soon. And actually, I think if you email someone at glendale.cc.ca.us, it'll still go to their email address now. I think it resolves to the same uh, mail server. Um, Speaking of that, in the lower right is this page where if you went to glendale.edu, you would be presented with this page. Do you want to see Glendale, California, or do you want to see Glendale, Arizona? We got, I think Dave Matthews was proud of this. We got the glendale.edu domain before Glendale Community College in Arizona did. So we had that actual um, URL for us, and you can see, well, you can't see, it's so small, but Glendale in Arizona had www.gc.maricopa.edu because their district is the Maricopa district. But we were very nice to to work with them to give people a choice. So the first time you came, you would choose whether you wanted to see the GCC in California or the GCC in Arizona. You clicked on one, it was supposed to save that, like, in your cookies or whatever. I think it might have, but I remember going to this screen more than once. But in 2001, the left side, that's what our college website looked at the time. So a little more of the time than the first one was more old-fashioned, I think, with that kind of Gothic script there. I don't know why Gary chose that script, but, this had our new logo. And then in 2011, this is what our website looked like. Pretty nice, lots of buttons. Um, and then in 2022, we have a more modern website, where it's not a list like lists of buttons everywhere. It's more modern where you scroll and you see the pictures and stuff. But of course, now we're going with a new website provider, so, or content management system, so it will look different fairly soon. And then the future. Mike Eberts mentioned this. I don't really have a lot to say about the future, but I did want to show some things because Patrick Shanazarian has given presentations on the new plans, and of course, everybody knows the community passed Measure GCC for $600 million in bonds. So we will be seeing still more changes to the campus in the future. One of those on the top left is the Instructional Building slash Conference Center, IBCC, or the David Weyer building, which was put on hold, and we went with the Buena Vista building first, but that's still in our plans. Montrose campus, of course, we purchased that bank building, and it haven't done much with it yet, but there are plans to do stuff with that. And then Garfield campus additions too. I mean, it already looks very nice with the Mariposa building and the new parking. But there are plans for changes there too. Is that the and then the future of the Verdugo campus. This is from that strategic plan that they put out. You can find that on the website. Um, some of the things that I kind of wanted to highlight here, because obviously the shape of the campus is going to stay the same, but the plan is to put a new sound stage for live production and like motion picture production type careers up in the upper lot there, proposed soundstage. Um, the other thing is that they'll always gets a lot of questions is the second elevator that's being proposed next to the main elevator from the parking structure down to the campus. The second elevator would go more directly into the Sierra Vista building, so people have direct access to student services on the third floor. I did put down new bleachers down at the bottom too, but there are a lot of athletics changes in store. And then parking garage with tennis courts on top. I don't know. They've been talking about they've been talking about putting in parking structures with things on top of them for many years, and it hasn't really worked out so far. But maybe in a few years. I believe so that is my last slide, but we did wanna leave some time, we do have some time for people to ask questions or to kinda reminisce about their time here because, I mean, both I is it alright to say, I mean, both Dr. Eberts and I are retiring, um, so we won't be at GCC. Well, I'm I won't speak for Dr. Eberts, but some of us won't be at GCC in the future and may come back periodically to see all these changes. But it's sort of fun at this kind of point in our careers to look back on where we've been and to also to use it as a time to say that change has always been constant. I mean, both our presentations, that's kind of the main theme, is that there's always change at our campuses. There's physical change, there's changes in the student population, things like that. The future those changes are up to us. Everybody in the room, everybody watching online, all the employees and the students at Glendale Community College, it's up to us what the future of the college is like. And we've learned that over these years that we've been at the college. We are responsible for kind of the legacy of this community college. So I just kind of want to leave it at that. And thank you for coming to the presentation. And I'll especially thank Mike Eberts too for his historical research. So are there any questions or
Yeah,
comments?
first, thank you so much to both of the speakers. That was really insightful, really fun. I have a question, and if anyone has a question in the room, please signal me and I'll bring the mic over. But do either of you have hopes for what you hope that the future generations will bring to the experience of GCC?
Well, since I'm standing at the mic, I mean, I do hope. Well, I do hope that we continue to support diversity, especially with the political climate. But we have our population is more diverse than the city of Glendale, right? But the city of Glendale is a small city. We have more Latino students than the city of Glendale's population, but we don't have that many Black students. We could certainly do more in serving Black students in our population area, our service area. But I hope we do remain committed to that. I mean, the students that we serve is anybody who'll come here, but we want to have that diversity. I think just that's the first thing that pops in my mind. I don't know about Mike.
Well, my vision for the future for here, and I think the assignment for Glendale College going forward is there's never been such a huge gulf between Middle America. We'll just call it that, and higher education America. And community colleges, if anyone stands in between and can be the bridge, it's us. So what does that mean? What do we do? How do we be diverse in the ways that we all understand it, but also diverse in terms of viewpoint? Because just as a nation, it's kind of looking like we can't go on like this. And so we have, yeah, we have a role to play in doing whatever healing we need to do. Yes, sir.
Do you mind waiting for the mic?
When the Montrose campus is going to be opening.
Can you? It's
Hi, my question for you is, do you know when the Montrose campus is going to be opening?
No, I think the plans for the near future are just for the Professional Development Center to stay there and offer their classes. It's going to be a while before the plans are in place for the Montrose campus. So I think it will be several years. Although we did create a planning document right before the shutdown for COVID. So that was 2020. So obviously out of date. But we were thinking about it at that point when we bought the property. But all those plans will have to change now. So it'll be several years.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was amazing seeing some of the pictures. I was wondering regarding when GCC started, you said we had 100 or so students that first year and it went up to 700 or so in 2 years. I was just wondering, do you happen to know how many faculty we had at the time to serve the 100 or so and the 700 or so students?
Well, it's kind of a slippery number because at the beginning they were, I think, just about all part-time faculty. I mean, there were a couple of full-timers, but it was a dozen, 15, something like that, and then it went up from there. Um, yeah, it was a very informal operation. The original dean of women, for example, was Dr. Nelson's wife, and she served without pay. So, so yeah, it was a pretty pretty low budget place.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. My question is, on the original land plot for this campus, was it a feature or a bug that it was on a hill? Like, is it that they would have preferred just a flat campus, but they didn't have the money for that, so they had to get this hillside? Or did they want this vertical kind of feel to the campus?
It was a cost thing. Um, with the Depression being on and the Roosevelt labor programs, you could build stuff really cheap. Land in the middle of Glendale was still, reasonably expensive. This was the least expensive of the options that they were looking at, and at that time, it was thought, "Gosh, this is 30 plus acres. Why would you need more than that?" So it was considered to be a lot of land in an attractive place at a good price that plentiful labor could improve.
Thank you.
And also, it's interesting that for most of its history, Glendale really served students in its service area. There wasn't free flow between community college districts until the late 80s, I think.
Yeah.
So the college wasn't really built for 15,000 students, right? And if you look at it, like the first buildings that were built were kind of on a flat surface, like the administration building, science building, auditorium, those are all at the bottom. And then as we expanded,
And that big parking lot that's up there, that was when we came here, that was a natural hillside.
Mm.
And it was sometime, what was it, mid 90s, late 90s, that got graded and turned into a parking lot.
yeah.
And there were some of us at the time that thought, "Ooh, we're sacrificing yet another thing to the automobile." So yeah, that one was eh, okay. Alex.
Hi. First off, I want to say you guys did a great job. I came in late, but I was wondering or making the suggestion that this be integrated in some part, some piece, some parcel of the GCC website, because I think the informational content is really valuable. Not just as a Wikipedia page, you can go anywhere and get that information, but something like this with the photos that speaks so much to where we came from and where we are now.
Yeah, I think we can do that. We are not just streaming the YouTube, but recording it. So we'll be able to embed that on the college website.
You have a narration right there.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
could put the PowerPoint on too. Although there are some nice from Chester Lynch and other like historical stuff about the college and from
Oh yeah,
Mike, that
we have
resources.
a real nice special collections department at the library that really does have some very nice archives about the college, and I haven't been through all of it yet, and but I will.
And another question, a couple other things. When I first came here in the late 90s, I had a project with Ann Ransford, working with the foundation, where I used to take a slideshow that was created through Mary Shelburne and before out to the community, to community groups, talking about a lot of what I presume you showed: Tent City, the development of the library, the removal of trees, the movement of the movement of the bookstore. So, great historical pieces. The other part is, I was wondering, did you talk much about athletics or going back to the 20s when we were at Glendale High School?
Um, I know we had men's and women's athletic teams from the beginning. Uh, for example, I don't know if we had a football team at the beginning, because that would really have put quite a bit of pressure on the facilities there at Glendale High.
Right.
But yes, we did have
Yeah.
athletics from day one.
Yeah. From my information and my research, I know we at least played basketball, baseball,
That's
and
right.
football.
Yeah.
Facility wise, I don't know. Stingle Field wasn't built yet until the late 40s through the Parks and Recreation. Uh, we only played on campus and started in 2005 for soccer and football.
Mhm.
So, and
Well,
I think
I know that up till 1990 or so, we had a pool across the street.
right.
The
We did.
the keyhole pool,
did.
and for years I thought, gosh, isn't it sad that was demolished? But
Sure.
the story that I've heard in more recent years was it kind of had to be, because it wasn't being kept up,
Right.
and repairing all the leaks and other damage
Yeah.
would have just been prohibitive.
Yeah, the maintenance was going to be really
Yeah.
expensive. And Bill Reinhardt, who coached a ton of sports and goes way back with the school, coached water polo and swim teams from there, and had some great results. But just a great history. And kudos to you both for putting this on.
Thanks. And I moved back in the presentation to one of Mike's slides, and if you can't read it, the middle box on the newspaper says cross country team wins. So we've had a history of cross country winning for many decades.
And I believe our nickname before we took on Vaqueros, and I don't know how that transition went, was the Buccaneers.
That's right.
Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
correct, Mike? Yeah. Yeah. I think orange and blue or something like that.
Buccaneers emerge victorious.
Right. So with the new campus, everything kind of had to be renamed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from your paper, I think the school colors used to be something different, like black and orange or scarlet and black. But then I think, well, I don't know. It might be, this is a question, that our colors changed to the cardinal and gold with the dedication of this campus, which was done by the president of USC at the time.
Right. Rufus von Kleinschmidt, who we
Kleinschmidt,
don't want to
yeah.
lean too much on that name, because old Rufus's reputation has taken a beating in recent
Well,
years.
you, one of the photos in the that used to be in AD 121 has a picture of the placement of the keystone, I guess,
Oh.
with a plaque or something that has von Kleinschmidt's name
Mm.
there. But I mean, so my guess was just that we changed the colors at the time because of this relationship with USC, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, because you really could see the relationship with
Yeah.
USC. So yeah, it makes sense that that's would be keyed in.
It
with
might be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, unless there are any more questions coming in from Zoom land, I think we can come to a conclusion here.
Yes, I just want to thank you both again. This was such a wonderful presentation, and thanks to all who attended in person. And then we have a bunch of people viewing virtually too. So thank you to everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.